Usually I give a sort of straightforward kind of chronological, history talk, things happen in this period, that period. And today I want to do something a little unusual. It came to me in a flash a month ago, 6 weeks ago, whatever, when I started thinking about the fact that today is my mother's Yartzeit. She passed away a year ago. We live in a new world. Yosef Cotton here was very kind. A week ago or 2 weeks ago, he put the last year's speech when I spoke directly about my mother and particularly about her experiences in the Holocaust. He put it onto YouTube. And Yosef tells me now that he already got a comment from the Holocaust deniers that the whole thing never happened, therefore everything I said is a lie. So therefore there's history, my story, your story, his story, and ours. That's all you're going to hear from me tonight. But it is a year since my mother's passing, and as I say before, it just sort of came to me because I was bringing a book to read, and Shal showed us here and showed me, as part of Yartzeit, and then I saw it's just too long, and this is something that deserves a fuller treatment. Then I said, okay, well, I have something coming down the line, and in my own mind, it sort of came together in a flash, and I'm going to share what I mean to say with you. As we see over here, the title of tonight's talk is Encountering the Other and Discovering Oneself, and has to do with trains. And a bunch of stories about trains kind of just jumped at me, and as I said before, I don't usually do this, but I'm going to try to organize around the theme of trains in the 19th and 20th century, because obviously trains were invented in the 19th century. Trains revolutionized life in an unprecedented fashion. I always like to say, what's the difference between 1800 and 1700? Not much. What's the difference between 1800 and the year 1? Not much. Right? I mean, travel and most things were pretty much the same. I know there were a few inventions along the way, but fundamentally, life was similar. Now, 1800 and 1900, it's a revolution. Okay? And the main invention of the 19th century was the train. I'm not here to give a whole history of trains, but just use your imagination. You have to take it from me, and how it completely revolutionized travel, economy, people's ability to transcend their local limitations, and things of that nature. So train is therefore an unusually powerful chiddush, invention, which really changed everything, much more so than the car has done to the train. I mean, I know we all use cars, all the rest of us. Sometimes we use trains to Washington, New York, places like that. But the difference between using an automobile and using a train is much less than the difference between using a horse and wagon and using a train. You see? But it struck me that I'm looking for the Jewish angle, and something had to do with my mother as well. And it struck me that the train is not simply an invention, which of course it is, but also is a cultural icon and a metaphor, a site, as they call it, for very interesting interactions between Jews and people who are not Jewish. Because another thing that happens in the 19th century, pretty much around the same time that trains are invented, are that the Jews get their civil rights. The two really kind of coincide in very interesting ways, and does one have to do with the other? Is one affected by the other? Well, not only is it true that at the same time the Jews get civil rights and the train is invented, the Jews abandon Yiddishkeit too at the same time, don't they? We've spoken about that here in earlier lecture series. So a lot of interesting things happened in the 1830s and 1840s, which is when the trains start. And are they connected in one? Of course they are. And I'm going to use the medium of stories to try to bring out my point. So I'll just commence by remarking upon the fact that obviously Jews are always traveling, more than anyone else. Jews in the Middle Ages, for example, are not allowed to own land, usually. How do you make a living? If you can't be a farmer, how do you make a living at the end of the day? Most places, there was guild systems. The Jews not even allowed to be a shoemaker and a barber and things like that. Right? Butcher, baker, candlestick maker are usually confined to members of the guilds who are by definition Christians. So how do you make a living? The answer is, of course, you got to be a merchant, which means you have to do a lot of